Today, we're digging into one of those rare studies that completely changes a field. It's a story about a massive real-world experiment in Thailand, a deep divide between two tribes of economists, and how building a digital twin of a village economy created a whole new way to fight poverty. Let's dive in. So for decades, this has been one of the biggest questions in development economics. You've heard the arguments, right? On one hand, microfinance could be this silver bullet for ending poverty. But critics wondered if it really created new growth or just moved money around. And the stakes couldn't be higher, with billions of dollars and millions of lives on the line. Getting a real answer to this was going to take a whole new way of thinking. And the stage for this new way of thinking? A massive government program in Thailand. In 2001, the Thai government poured almost $2 billion into nearly 80,000 villages to kickstart local banks. I mean, the sheer scale of this thing meant that figuring out its true impact wasn't just an academic exercise. It was absolutely critical. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with this big intellectual puzzle, then zoom into a brilliant accidental experiment in rural Thailand. We'll see how they built this incredible virtual village, what it showed them, and finally, why this one paper ended up building a crucial bridge for the entire field of economics. Okay, so to really get why this paper was such a game changer, you have to understand what the world of development economics looks like back then. It was basically split into two camps, two tribes, you could say, and they had totally different ways of looking at the world. On one side, you had the folks behind the credibility revolution. They were all about randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, and they were fantastic at getting super clean, reliable answers to the question, did this program work? The problem, their method was kind of a black box. It could tell you if it worked, but not really why, or what might happen to the whole village, not just the people in the trial. Then, on the other side, you had the macro theorists. These guys built these huge, complex models of entire economies to understand the big picture. Their strength was thinking about system-wide effects and overall well-being. But their weakness? Their models were often built on these big assumptions that were really hard to prove with actual data. And the craziest part? These two tribes barely ever talk to each other. And this is where our story takes a turn, right into Thailand, because this new government policy, completely by accident, created the perfect opportunity to bring these two warring tribes together. It was a massive, real-world experiment just waiting to be analyzed. The policy itself was, beautifully simple. Every village in the country, almost 80,000 of them, got a flat 1 million baht. That's it. Same amount for everyone, rolled out quickly, and it was a total surprise, which is key, because it means people didn't change their behavior beforehand. And this is where the genius of the setup really shines through. Think about it. Every village gets the same 1 million baht. But villages, of course, have different numbers of people living in them. So the amount of new credit available per person was totally different from one village to the next, and it was basically random. A tiny village got a huge cash infusion per person, while a huge village got a much smaller one. And that random variation was the golden ticket for the researchers Kaboski and Townsend. Now, if they had just looked at the results of this experiment, that would have been the old way of doing things. But the real magic of this paper, the true innovation, was what they did next. They didn't just analyze the data from the real world. They used it to build an entirely new one. They built what's called a structural equilibrium model. The best way to think about it is like a digital twin of a village. Seriously, it wasn't just a spreadsheet, it was a complete, working simulation of the village economy, one that could model all the complicated decisions that real people have to make every single day about borrowing, saving, and working. And this wasn't some simple little model either. I mean, it was incredibly detailed. It captured everything from how people choose their jobs to how they build up capital over time, and even the real-world risk of not being able to pay back a loan. It modeled the messy, complicated reality of life. Okay, so this is the most important part. They use that clean, random data from the Thai experiment to set the rules inside their virtual village. They calibrated their simulation with hard, real-world evidence. So this is way more than just impact evaluation. This is structural equilibrium estimation. It's not just asking, did the program work? It's about learning the fundamental rules of the economic game itself. All right, so now they have this incredibly realistic, fine-tuned virtual economy. And with it, they could see things that a normal experiment could never, ever show them. They could finally open up that black box. So what did they find? Well, first, the model confirmed the program was having a real effect. People were investing more and consuming more, especially the families who had been struggling to get credit before. But it also showed that the results were all over the place, super varied from one household to the next. And here's the kicker. The system-wide or general equilibrium effects were a huge deal. The money didn't just help the person who borrowed it, it rippled through the whole village, changing things for everybody. But the real smoking gun, the thing that proved the model was onto something deep, was this crazy puzzle in the data. People's consumption, the amount they spent, actually went up by more than the amount of credit they borrowed. Now, how is that possible, right? Well, the model explained it perfectly. For people who are severely credit constrained, getting a loan didn't just mean new money to spend. It meant they felt safe enough to finally spend their own rainy day savings. The fact that the model predicted this totally counterintuitive result was powerful proof that it was capturing the true economic reality. And this really gets to the superpower of this whole approach. It's not just about doing forensics on the past. It's about foresight. Once you have this validated virtual economy, you can start asking, what if? What if the government gave twice as much money? What if they only gave it to farmers? The model can give you real quantitative answers, something a one-off RCT could never do. So let's zoom back out. Why was this one paper such a seismic event in economics? Well, because it finally solved that deep divide we started with. It built a bridge between those two tribes. Kaboski and Townsend basically showed everyone that you don't have to choose. You don't have to pick between the rock-solid causal evidence of an experiment and the big-picture insights of a theoretical model. You can actually have both. They used the real-world experiment to make their model credible, and they used the model to understand the experiment on a much deeper level. And this paper wasn't just a random bolt from the blue. You can trace this amazing evolution in economic thinking. It starts with Robert Townsend's early work in the 90s, where he was using village data to test specific economic theories. Then you get to this 2011 paper, where they're not just testing a theory, they're estimating an entire dynamic village economy. And that legacy is still pushing the frontier today, influencing massive new studies that are now using huge RCTs specifically to measure those general equilibrium effects that this paper showed were so important. So its legacy is crystal clear. This paper created a whole new playbook for evaluating development programs. It advanced how we model things like credit constraints, it showed how theory and data can make each other stronger, and maybe most importantly, it elevated the entire field from just looking at individuals to understanding the whole economic system. At the end of the day, the biggest lesson is this. Economic policies don't happen in a neat little bubble. A cash transfer, a new school, whatever it is, these things don't just affect the person who gets the check. They send ripples through the entire community, changing wages, prices, and opportunities for everyone. This paper gave us a credible, powerful roadmap for finally understanding that whole complex system. Which leaves us with a pretty incredible thought. These tools give us the power to test drive huge, transformative policies inside a computer before we roll them out in the real world. So the question for all of us now is, with this amazing new capability, what kind of future should we simulate first? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.